We made this.
Welcome to Back to the Decade, the podcast where we rewind 10 years and reflect on pop culture of the time. I'm Thomas Adams, joined as always by Nick Hoffman.
Hey, what's up?
Nick, it's been a long time. We recorded, I think, last 6 months ago. We just are busy people. We're dads. My baby keeps getting sick at daycare and bringing nasty shit home to me.
Wait, what? 6 months ago? We recorded last month.
6 weeks ago. My brain is not working very well.
I was like, are you joking?
I meant 6 weeks ago, and that was very on brand for the way my month is gone. But yeah, it is late May as we record. We're both fully vaccinated. We actually got to see each other in person recently.
I think we may have even hugged. I think we hugged.
We did, yeah. And
luckily, I didn't get your stomach flu or whatever that.
Yeah, thank God for that. I was a little paranoid after I got a really bad stomach bug the day after we watched Game 1 of Hawks Knicks, and I was like, I really hope that I didn't give the three other guys that were there the same thing because this fucking sucked. But yeah, it's just great to kind of be around people again. I went home to visit family and got to go to Universal Studios for the first time in many years, and that was a really fun time. Have you ever gone to Orlando and done the theme park experience down there?
Oh yeah.
When's the last time you've been down there?
Well, I actually went down there for the job I used to have before the pandemic.
Oh yeah,
and I was actually on the lot at Universal Studios doing demos. But the last time I went there to have fun, gosh, I mean, I must have been I don't know. I guess I was in high school. Shit, I feel like I've been there. I thought I'd been there since, but maybe not.
It's a very nostalgic place for me, having grown up 2 hours away. And obviously being obsessed with movies, there's something about these theme park attractions that are geared to be reminiscent of all of these famous monumental films. So yeah, being there now, a little bit older, it brought me right back, but I certainly cannot get through a full day of the nonstop walking in the lines and the crowds quite the same way I used to when I was 15, 16 years old. It's a little bit more difficult now. Maybe raising an infant is part of that. But yeah, so that was a lot of fun. But I think on a movie related note, theaters are back. I'm not sure if that's something you guys have been able to do yet. Obviously it's hard with a baby to go to the movies post-vaccine.
No, we haven't, and I'm actually a movie that I was super pumped to see before the pandemic started because I just watched the first one. It was A Quiet Place, and Quiet Place 2 I was really excited about, and it was getting really good reviews. And then of course the pandemic happened, and didn't get a chance to see it. So. And that's one of those movies that was actually waiting. They put the movie in the vault and we're not releasing this outside of the theater. We're going to wait until people are back and they can watch the movie here in the theaters. So they finally re-released that, and that might be the first one I go see. I mean, Kat won't go with me. She doesn't care. Our den is our theater at this point. She'd be perfectly happy, probably never going to the movie theater again. But for me, I'm I really want to see A Quiet Place too. So I kind of got that itch again. I'm oh shit, man, that looks cool, looks fun. Really like the first one. So I might go do that in the next couple of weeks.
I'm in the exact same spot as you. We actually had intention to see it tonight. And then this bug kind of hit me, and the week obviously took a hit because of that. So we'll probably see that next week or something. But I know that like I went and saw Tenet when that released back in September. I rented out a theater, but even that just felt super strange because we were still in the heart of the pandemic, like right in the middle of it. So to go now and see, it really was like kind of fitting that the first movie to really get pulled because of the pandemic is going to be the first one to come back. So it'll be nice to just kind of be back without the anxiety of the virus quite as much. But yeah, we also had the Oscars a week or so after our last recording. And I know we texted a little bit during that ceremony. It was just kind of a shit show, as the Oscars tend to be. I was just kind of flabbergasted by the way that they rearranged the presentation order, the way that they kind of did away with movie clips, which is the thing that a lot of people tune in to see is a show about movies. So they want to see clips of these movies that are being awarded and talked about. But they did away with all of that. And it felt like such a self-important elitist nonsense thing where it's just people in a room talking about themselves or about whoever else was there. And yeah, it just was really like not a great broadcast at all.
Yeah, it was bullshit. It sucked. And they like redid the order of everything. You know, the way they
Best
ended
Picture
it
didn't even go last.
No, it was Best Actor, which everyone was like convinced it's going to be. Forgive me. Who am I thinking of?
Chadwick Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman. Yeah, sorry. And it ended up being Anthony Hopkins. And they just were like, okay, and the winner is Anthony Hopkins. And they were like, okay, bye, see you later. Anthony Hopkins was in
there.
Yeah, he was in fucking England, and he didn't want to go. And he requested to do like a over the internet Skype thing, and they wouldn't let him do that. That's from what I read. This fucking guy's like he's definitely got underlying conditions. He's old man,
right?
And we're in the middle of a pandemic. Like he doesn't want to travel. Don't blame him. So yeah, man, the whole thing was just stupid, and it felt weird. And
the last like 5 minutes or so, as crazy as that was, it did feel a little bit like a train wreck that I couldn't turn away from, because they so purposefully set that up they wanted to end on like this tribute to Chadwick. And that's the whole reason that, you know, Chadwick obviously passed away. It's this great, talented young actor. He gave a great performance. They want to celebrate that. That's fine, whatever. But to plan for that without knowing for sure he was going to win, and they were just going off a hunch, and it completely blew up in their face. So it was disastrous, but in some ways it was kind of entertaining just to watch how much of a failure it was. But yeah, I mean, there's not a ton to talk about there. It was a forgettable Oscars for a forgettable movie year that hopefully, because of the pandemic, we just kind of can move on and get a lot, you know, there were some great movies last year, but I'm really like missing those blockbusters, those big in theater experiences.
Yeah, I can't believe movies like the next James Bond or like Top Gun, Maverick, they've just been sitting in the can, just waiting. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's gonna be so amazing to be back and seeing those again. So we're talking about one movie like that today. We're talking about Thor, I believe it's the fourth film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the fourth of like eventually 25 or some shit like that. Because we're in May, so it's the beginning of summer blockbuster season. I think last year at this time we did Iron Man 2, which was the last one in chronological order. But we'll talk about that today. We're going to talk about one of my favorite, if not my absolute favorite comedies of the entire decade. which is Bridesmaids. And then we're also going to talk about Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life, a movie neither of us had seen, but both had heard a lot about. And I think we have some stuff to say about it. So let's just get into it and hit the decade rewind.
Let's go back to the decade.
So before we get into like those three movies we're going to talk about, I did want to start our May 2011 section of this episode by talking about a movie that came out in May 2011, limited release in New York and LA. It was a Best Picture nominee, big awards contender. I think it won screenplay, huge hit of the time, memorable movie of the decade, and that's Midnight in Paris. Now, I think we talked a little bit about Midnight in Paris in our first 2011 episode. Obviously, difficult movie to talk fully about because its creator has had a lot of horrible accusations against him. All indications are that he's a monstrous person. But I think a lot of times it's important to somewhat separate the art from the artist. It's not necessarily the art's fault that this director is a bad person. So I did revisit Midnight in Paris. I hadn't seen it since it came out. I liked it at the time. I wasn't as in love with it as everybody else, but I really enjoyed rewatching this movie. It is a lovely film about nostalgia and like that longing for a time before. I think the performances are great. Like Rachel McAdams, I love her and everything, but she's just like a perfect snobby bitch in this movie. She like plays that pitch perfect. Owen Wilson is kind of good at being Owen Wilson, just that like kind of doofusy guy that's intellectual but doesn't really have it together.
Hey, he's like the Woody Allen character.
Yeah, that's what he's playing, and he does a great job of it. And Marion Cotillard's the ingenue, the like love interest, and she's fit for that. And I just got a kick out of watching. You know, the premise of the movie is that he strolls the streets of Paris late at night, and a car picks him up at the strike of midnight and takes him back to the 1920s, where he meets the likes of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Pablo Picasso and Ernest Hemingway, Salvador Dali, like so many famous names that we know from history and just things that we're taught growing up. And I got a kick out of like watching these like well-known actors that weren't like super famous at the time, but they kind of like pop in these roles. You know, chief among them being Tom Hiddleston, who we'll talk about later for, you know, breaking out as Loki in the Thor movies. He's playing F. Scott Fitzgerald and does a great job of that. But yeah, I don't want to talk too much about it, but it's a great movie, one that I wish we could have covered more in depth, because I do think it is a staple of that year in film, but it was for sure worth mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, no one in this podcast between the two of us is more hurt than me, because I really fucking love this movie. Like, I saw it in the theater, bought it on Blu-ray immediately when it came out, and I'm a big sucker for these types of romance comedies, and the music's fantastic. Yeah, as you mentioned, the cast is wonderful. No one was better than the guy that played Ernest Hemingway, which was Corey Stoll.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Man, yeah, it's just such a good movie, and it's really fun. I mean, you know, there's time travels in it. Like, it's got all these great little perks about it, and it's very well written and acted, and yeah, everyone's perfectly cast. So yeah, I mean, I haven't rewatched it. I didn't watch it like you did, but at the time, between 2011 and like 2015, I don't know, I probably saw it like somewhere on 5 to 10 times range. Yeah, I love it. Unfortunately, I can't really celebrate it today though, because I was recently listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Rewatchables, and they did Lethal Weapon 2, which I love the Lethal Weapon movies. I grew up with them. Fucking awesome movies. Mm-hmm. One of the greatest franchises of all time. It's just they're every 1 through 4 are great. So they did Lethal Weapon 2, and they were talking about it, and they had one of their guests on, which is every once in a while he'd be like, "Why, Mel? Why? God damn it! Why, Mel? Why'd you have to do what you did, man? Why'd you have to say what you said, man? You fucking ruined it. Okay, it was beautiful. You ruined it, man. You ruined it." So
it wasn't that Van Lathan, I think.
Did you listen to the Rewatchables? That one?
I didn't listen to that one, but I do listen to a lot of them, because it's not like that's not like a staple movie for me. So I tend to watch or listen to it when it's a movie that I have seen a ton of times.
Right.
But I did notice that I think he was the guest that episode, Van Lathan, who does their Higher Learning podcast.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this one. I mean, I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's tough because Woody Allen has such a not as much in the last 10 years, like a lot of the stuff that he made before he got fully canceled and basically exposed. A lot of his movies were kind of falling apart. I think Midnight in Paris is maybe like the last.
This is the last great one, yeah.
Great film he made, but there's just like so many great things from the 70s and the 80s, and I'm someone that, like, I'm younger than you, obviously, and I've seen a lot of his stuff, but I've not seen all of it. I've not seen Hannah and Her Sisters. I've only seen parts of Manhattan. There's just a lot of great classic films that he's responsible for that I kind of wish I had gone back before this happened, because it's a lot harder to kind of like go back through his filmography now, knowing everything. It kind of ruins a lot of it, which sucks. But for the sake of what we're doing, Midnight in Paris is a great movie. It's funnier than I remembered too. Like, there's a great gag with the sci-fi kind of unravels a little bit more as the movie progresses. Like, you kind of learn that it's not just the 20s, that like they also go to the 1890s at some point. And I think there's one moment where the Rachel McAdams character's father is like, I hired a private investigator to follow him because Owen Wilson's marrying his daughter, and he gets in this car every night and drives away. And they're like, where did he go? He's like, well, no one knows. The private investigator, I guess, never showed up. He disappeared. And then it just cuts, and you see him like in the Roman Empire being chased by like a tiger or something. So that was
he's constantly jumping through the whatever
the time
moments in time. Yeah, I forgot about that.
So yeah, that was a fun rewatch, but I just wanted to bring it up before we kind of get into our review, because I think that's for sure one we would have pegged down had it not been for some of those circumstances surrounding it. But yeah, we could kind of move on now. I think for our first in-depth review, I'm not going to have as much to say about this one. So let's talk about Thor first.
Whoever wields this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
Who are you?
You'll see soon enough.
God, I hope you're not crazy.
Thor, God of Thunder.
You're a fan of Thor, so why don't you tell me some of the things you like about it?
Yeah, I mean, I like Thor because really it starts with me not liking Thor or giving a shit. I remember when this movie came out, and I was like, "What? Really? We're doing a Thor movie?" Okay, I don't know. The only thing I knew about Thor was like a really bad, albeit I think it was kind of popular show in the '80s. It was like a weird Thor show. I don't know if it lasted very long. So I had images of that, and I just didn't find his character very interesting, nor did I really know much about him. So I remember going to the theater being pretty, low expectations. But I had a lot of fun with it, man. I thought it was like way better than it had any business being. It was the fourth of the Marvel films to come out that year, right? Or not that year, but we had said there was Iron Man. There was what else before Thor?
The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, and then Thor.
Okay. Yeah, so they were setting it up, man. It was real early. And I mean, this is the beginning of Chris Hemsworth's so far great career. He's a very good, he was perfect for this role. Good little comedic timing in there, which I don't think they really take advantage of as much until like Thor Ragnarok. But
that's really where they unlock him, I think.
Yeah. Which is definitely the best of the Thor movies. I mean, we can talk about that, in 8 years. But I think it was, well written, well paced. I love the cast. I mean, it's the beginning of Loki as well, which he's the character that you're supposed to sort of hate, which is Thor's, I guess, adopted brother. Like what? He's like an orphan, right?
Yeah.
So he's kind of like the evil like stepbrother that you're kind of meant to hate and root against, because he ends up being the guy that sort of puts a wrench in everything. And he also, as like anyone that's a fan of the Marvel movies, ends up being like the main villain in the first Avengers as well. So and he's an interesting character, because when you go back and watch what we just literally just did, I hadn't seen Thor, and I didn't really have any reason to rewatch it for a long time. So I liked it, but it wasn't like my favorite Marvel movie. So to see Loki there again, and like the beginnings of his character, where he's such a little prick, such a little like shit that you really hate, and have no reason to like. And his evolution is really one of my favorites of this Marvel universe, and all 20 some odd movies that they've made now, where he has evolved into this like anti-hero that everyone really likes. And he's like very funny and like charismatic. And even though he's responsible for, I don't know how many fucking thousands of deaths of not just Earthlings, but like, who knows, man, like planets, I don't even know. But, he's got a new show coming out here in the next month, which I'm excited about. So I know it's fun to go back and see kind of the origins of these characters. And of course, Anthony Hopkins, the late, great Oscar winner. He's still alive. I don't mean to say he's dead, but
two-time Oscar winner now.
Yeah.
You did say late.
Can I still say late, great, even if he's still alive? What's her name? Renee Russo? Dude, speaking of, we just talked about Lethal Weapon. She was in Lethal Weapon 3 and 4.
Idris Elba.
One of those Renee Russo is one of those actresses you're like, whatever happened to Renee Russo? Like, I loved her. Like, what? She used to be in movies. She's not in movies anymore. But she pops up in there as Thor's mom. She's great.
Isn't that like Gina Davis category? I'm like that would
exactly.
Where you're like, what the hell happened? She was like a star.
Yeah, I definitely pulled that saying from Family Guy episode, which is Gina Davis.
Is that
Whatever happened to Gina Davis? She used to be in movies. She's not in movies anymore.
She used to be in movies.
Yeah. But,
oh, that's funny. That's exactly like, I think I subconsciously thought that, but didn't make the connection until you said that's the Family Guy bit.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, but that's the kind of actress she is. Like, you used to see them in movies, and it's been so long. And she's still beautiful. She still looks great. She's still a great actress. So yeah, I kind of got in more to the mythology of it as well. Like, I thought it was fun. Where the comedy that was there was well done. Good again. Chris Hemsworth shows like early signs of just great comic timing, and he's very funny, along with being this big, hulky, sexy dude. Natalie Portman, I've always been a fan of hers, but she was probably my least favorite part of this movie. But because I hate the way they like use her. She's just this sort of like, she looks at Hemsworth or Thor, his big muscles and blonde hair, and just every scene she's in, she's just kind of like throbbing, like she can't control herself because she's so horny for Thor. That part of the movie I hate, but
she loves the thunder.
Yeah, for sure, man. But I mean,
like the end of the movie is like she's this brilliant scientist who's dedicating all of her work now to get back to him.
Yeah. And Stellan Skarsgård. I always have a hard time saying his name.
Kat Dennings is like the friend.
Yeah,
it is a great cast, and like I didn't realize that fucking Kenneth Branagh is the director. The like esteemed British theater actor and like famous. He's just like been in so much shit as an actor. I didn't realize he directed Thor. It's kind of a weird thing out there.
I didn't even look at who directed because it wasn't
super well directed.
Well, no, it just wasn't. Oh yeah, of course, yeah. I didn't know he directed either. Yeah, he's in some really great movies. That's so funny.
Yeah, that was kind of a funny tidbit.
The guy that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I read a funny anecdote about this movie where they were talking to Anthony Hopkins about his decision to like come over and be in the Marvel universe and take a Marvel role. And he was like, I do this thing when I'm looking for a project, and it's different between when I'm looking for, my prestige projects and what are going to be like big money makers for me. And he's like, I take the script and I go through my dialogue scenes, and I circle them and I write NAR. And the interviewer's like, what does that mean? He goes, no acting required. I just thought that was really funny. He was like, I get millions of dollars to basically do nothing in this movie. Of course I'm going to do it.
Yeah, the guy I was referring to earlier, he directed Ragnarok, Waititi.
Taika Waititi, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he just needs to direct like all of them from here on out. But
yeah, he's directing the next one too. I think he's the one that like figures out that universe, and I think like I actually didn't see Thor when it came out. I saw it at my college orientation. I came like I had graduated high school. It was like the late June, and I went to Florida State for the weekends to like pick what my courses were going to be and tour the dorms and whatnot. And they had like a freshman orientation schedule where it was like movie screening this night, lunch this night, whatever, or this day. And they were showing Thor. So that's like the one time I saw Thor was that particular day. And I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to, because the critical response was kind of negative. It's got like a lot more laugh lines than I was anticipating. I think Hemsworth, you kind of like get a glimpse of how funny he was going to be in. I think like he's pretty funny in some of the earlier movies, like the earlier Avengers movies. He has like nice little one-liners, but then in Ragnarok and Avengers Endgame, he just completely hits a different stratosphere, and it's like amazing comic relief, so funny. And
Well, he really hits rock bottom too, right? Like his whole life is changed forever, right? So he needs to kind of reinvent himself because it doesn't fucking matter anymore that he, was the god of thunder in this other universe that like no longer exists, or not universe, but like planet or whatever. Didn't his homie end up getting fucked, like completely destroyed?
Right at the end of Ragnarok, his home gets destroyed, and then he's taking the people of Asgard away in some ship, and like Thanos shows up and kind of fucks with that, and his parents die and his brother dies, and yeah, he's kind of at rock bottom by the time Infinity War and Endgame roll around. But
yeah, I mean, I greatly need, the way Endgame ended was, Hemsworth, Thor going on the starship,
Guardians.
Okay, Guardians, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The fuck's his name? Star-Lord.
Star-Lord, yeah.
Him going on Star-Lord's ship, and being like kind of trying to take over there, like being the not so sidekick, like just trying to like become the leader of the group that he's not the leader of, and of course Star-Lord's like, no, this is my ship
for him.
I just love that shit, dude. I really wanted more of that at the end. It's like, man, I hope they make a movie out of this, which I think there are plans to have him be in like the next Guardians, and I don't know how that's going to play into, Love and Thunder or whatever it's called, but
yeah.
Yeah, dude, I'm all about it though. Yeah, I mean, I think I enjoyed this. I enjoyed rewatching this more than I thought I would, and probably liked it even a little more than I did the first time I saw it. So, oh yeah, and the girl Kat Dennings, I remember she pops up, who plays Darcy.
Mm-hmm.
Because I came fresh off watching WandaVision.
Right.
And I was like, oh shit, that's the girl. She's in WandaVision. So like they're connecting that there too. So yeah, that was pretty fun.
They dig like way back into the franchise for that when they brought her into WandaVision. Kind of a smart thing to do. Because it does kind of like match, like what's going on in WandaVision matches sort of what her character does in Thor, like this like exploration of these weird anomalies. I think like in a different, if they had a different actress that wasn't giant movie star Natalie Portman playing the Jane role, they might have found a way to like incorporate her a little bit into WandaVision, but obviously a lot harder to get Natalie Portman to just show up in your TV show.
Yeah, I like Darcy. Like I like that actress too, Kat Dennings. Like I really enjoy her. So
yeah, she's good.
And back to the like Natalie Portman thing, like no knock against her, but like I hate when movies feel like forced to have this like romantic storyline, romantic interests. Like we don't always need that shit. Like I don't need Thor to come to Earth and like fall in love with an Earth girl. Like that's beside the point. Like it's completely unnecessary, which is like something you end up like, it's kind of the lesson you learn from their relationship anyway. Like just dead wood, man. Like there's no reason for it. Like just
mm-hmm.
So I hate when movies do that. Like they just kind of like throw in this pointless fucking like romance storyline that just doesn't, it just takes up time, waste time. It can be completely cut out for what could be a better movie. I don't know. And then the way they handled this great actress and Natalie Portman, just unnecessary and stupid. So that's if I was going to have one big qualm about it, it's definitely that.
Yeah, Natalie Portman is the entire element of like the Thor movies that doesn't work for me, which is why I think it gets a lot better in Ragnarok when they don't have to worry about her at all, because she's, decided to step down from the franchise. And I do hear she's going to be back for Love and Thunder. I think she's going to play like a female Thor, which...
Oh, God. What?
I'm skeptical, but if it's under the YTT direction, then I have a lot more confidence in it that he can do something fun with that actually works. Because she is a great actress, and I think if she has material that she believes in or that she like thinks that she can have a good time with, then she'll do a great job. I just don't. I think it's kind of evident that she's not really into it and not trying super hard in this movie, and then like especially like the second Thor that would come a couple years later. That stuff and some of the stuff in Asgard doesn't work quite as well for me. It's a little slower and not quite as fun and interesting as other Marvel universes. Like I think I'm a lot more into some of the like espionage spy stories that come with Captain America, or like the tech ego stuff with Iron Man. I don't know if Thor was ever really like my character until Ragnarok, where I was kind of won over. But this movie is fine. Like it's like a very middle of the road superhero film. It's caught somewhere in the middle for me between, you know, what Marvel would eventually become, like with the comedic relief that comes in the Avengers and films that would follow, and that more self-serious comic booky tone that's in maybe the original Spider-Man trilogy or the original X-Men's. It's kind of like somewhere in the middle, which is maybe why it didn't work quite as well for me. But I did want to bring up, before we move on, I saw a couple casting what ifs for this movie, where
Nice.
it was a long process of trying to get Thor and Loki cast, and actually they originally tried to get Tom Hiddleston to be Thor, because Tom Hiddleston's like super jacked, I guess. But the problem is you wouldn't necessarily know that by looking at him. He's a much smaller physique. And I guess Whedon, who was brought on to do a lot of prep work for the Avengers, I believe in late 2009, early 2010, is when he starts doing his pre-production work on Avengers. It's before they've cast Thor, before they've cast Captain America. And he's actually the one, he is a writer on a movie called The Cabin in the Woods. That
Love that movie.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal movie that came out actually later in 2012, but he had filmed it way earlier. And it was off of Cabin in the Woods, where Whedon was like, this Hemsworth guy is dynamite. Like, he just has the physique and the comic timing, and he's just like what you need. So he's actually the one that pushed for Hemsworth to get the role of Thor in the Marvel franchise, which is, you know, pretty monumental for both him and Hiddleston, that Hiddleston went back and was like willing to go out for Loki after missing out on Thor, and gets that role. And he's obviously had a phenomenal career playing that character. But they, the one other one I was going to mention was that Marvel actually went to Jim Carrey and wanted him to play Loki, which is an entirely different character to me than what we end up getting.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Tom Hiddleston is Thor, no way. I mean, he's perfect as Loki. He's like made for Loki. But he's a little scrawny, little Weasley looking dude.
Exactly. I think he just like, it's difficult now because
I'm sure he of course he's jacked in some ways, like he's tight, tight around the torso and all that, but he's not like crazy muscular.
Hemsworth is just so wide. Like, that's why I think he's a perfect Thor, like physique wise, because it's not just that he's jacked, it's that his shoulders are like boulders. And I think you need that. Like, you need the guy that's broad and kind of fills, that doesn't make that cape look ridiculous. It can be so easy for that to look stupid. But I think he actually pulls the costume off. The other guy that went out for Thor was Alexander Skarsgård, which again, probably like too thin, like too slim.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that more so, but
That would have been interesting, especially because his dad was already kind of a character in the film. But
yeah,
I think we can move on from Thor, though. There's not much more to say about it. I want to get into Bridesmaids.
To my bridesmaid.
I need a trip that I can fantasize forever so that I'm able to have sex with my husband.
Never been to this part of town before. Oh, look, you can get a check cash next door.
We're gonna get with all these men. It's gonna be like a salad bar.
I'm a nervous flyer, I'm sorry.
You cannot be up here.
This is a very strict plane.
On Wiedersehen.
This wedding is going to be perfect and beautiful. I am dead serious.
Bridesmaids, rated R.
This is a movie I've probably seen like 19 times. I watch it constantly. I know the words super well. You and Kat just watched this a couple nights ago, right?
yep. But it's one of Kat's favorite movies, and I've seen it, probably 3 or 4 times now. So yeah, I love it, man. It's so funny. Definitely one of the funniest movies of the decade. Like, yeah, easily top 5. Yeah, not a whole lot of bad to say about it.
No, and I
it
think
might run a little long, but that's about it.
it's such a genius job with casting too, because I think that I actually, like, watching it this time around, asked myself if I think Melissa McCarthy is the funniest performance of the decade by any actor in a comedy. As I was going through it, she just, like, she captures something in the movie that I just, like, I'm not seeing anybody else do. It's this, like, perfect blend of physical comedy and joke delivery, but it's not even like her character doesn't have that many jokes. Like, it's just like who she is and the way that she delivers each line in such funny ways. Like, she makes mundane sentences sound funny in this movie. I think there's one part where, like, she first meets the Kristen Wiig character, and there's this, like, really tall black dude in a Kangol hat that's just kind of, like, standing around, and she confuses the guy for Annie's boyfriend. And that's the joke, is she keeps mixing up these random dudes as Annie's boyfriend. And she's just, like, rambling on about whatever, and then she kind of, like, stops what she's saying. And I'll put it in, like, in sound clip, but she, like, stops mid-sentence and goes,
Hey, shut my mouth. Look at unbelievable. You must be Annie's fella. Megan. It's a pleasure.
Oh, he's not. I'm not with him. Sorry.
Oh, all right. I'm glad he's single, because I'm going to climb that like a tree.
there's just something about the way that she delivers it that's so funny to me. And there's so many moments like that throughout the movie. And I keep quoting it, like, to this day. There's the line she says about her brother where the Maya Rudolph character has gone to the bathroom, and she says that poor girl's probably in there crying her fucking eyes out because she has to marry Doug, and he's my brother. I love him, but he's a fucking asshole. And
Yeah.
I just, like, quote that line all the time. It's just so funny to me.
Yeah, and then by the end of the movie, like, she's, like, hugging him and everything. But then, of course, one of the last things you see is she's like, I put a loaded gun in his carry-on. It's gonna be so pissed. I'm like, who's the asshole here?
It's so good. And
yeah, she's phenomenal, man. She's so good.
And the what's his name? Chris O'Dowd, who plays the cop that becomes Kristen Wiig's love interest. He's phenomenal. Like his line delivery of certain things is so funny. John Hamm in his small role, obviously, like he's just such a freaking asshole, but he does it so well.
I love Hamm, dude. Fucking love John Hamm. I've had a couple different run-ins with John Hamm, personally. Like,
yeah, I think you've said
I've met him multiple times. He is like not just a funny, very good actor, but just a wonderful human being from any interactions I've had with him. But like, yeah, man, I was at a Wilco show. We had friends that were sitting separately from us at the Tabernacle, and we were like walking over to him, and I just like double take, like, oh shit, it's John Hamm. And like he's like looking right at me as I say that, and he just starts laughing. And I was like, oh man, I'm sorry, dude. I didn't expect to see you here. And he was so nice. And he like took a picture with me and my buddies. But then, and again, connected with Wilco, I saw Jeff Tweedy, who's like the lead singer of Wilco, do like a solo show in Decatur at Eddie's Attic. But he was so sick, like you got a stomach virus. He's throwing up, doing other things at other ends. And he couldn't come on into Eddie's Attic to do he was going to do like a kind of a music kind of Q&A session thing. So instead they got John Hamm to replace him and just like sit in Eddie's Attic and tell stories. And we're just sitting
and just
front and center,
monologue, basically
listening to John Hamm talk. But that being said, I had no idea who he was really, other than he was like the guy from Mad Men when I first watched Bridesmaids. So I wasn't aware of his like comedic talents. And he's so funny, man. Like that dude is so good at like comic timing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just figured he was a serious actor because he's in this like great show on AMC called Mad Men, and he's like plays Don Draper. Yeah, so that was the first time I'd ever seen him be funny. That was the first time I really became a fan of his, was Bridesmaids. So I was like, isn't that fucking guy that's like on that show that everyone loves?
Yeah, same exact thing for me too when I saw it.
Which I've tried to watch Mad Men multiple times. It's not that it's a bad show. It's just like, oh man, I don't know. I think it's just tough to get out of that first season. It's like long and draws out, and it's just great.
Yeah, I feel the same. I feel the same about not just Mad Men specifically. There's a lot of dramas.
Yeah, I mean,
that are slower that like that and take a long time for me to get into that I don't always give the time to.
Yeah, that could be a subject in the next movie we talk about, Tree of Life, which is all kinds of fucking slow drama. Anyway.
Yeah, you're right though. Ham is so gifted comedically, and
yeah,
it's not just Bridesmaids. Like he would later do it throughout his career, and yeah, he's just like a perfect bit role in this movie. And the other person I really want to talk about in relation to Bridesmaids is Rose Byrne.
Oh yeah.
Rose Byrne, who before this movie she was on a lead on the show Damages with Glenn Close, this legal drama on, I believe it was FX. And this was like her first comedic role. And she like basically like begged them to give it to her because they really weren't buying her as like this comedic actress, but she felt right for the part. And I don't know the name off the top of my head. There was another well-known comic star they wanted to play Helen, but they ended up giving it to Rose Byrne. And I think like it's just honestly the birth of one of my favorite comic actresses of this decade. She's just done like so many funny and great roles in Neighbors and in Instant Family, and she's just good. She's just really good, and I think that she's part of what makes this movie as special as it is.
It's funny you say that because I don't know. Rose Byrne is like a sort of anomaly to me because I've seen her in both serious roles and comedic roles, and I always find her perfectly fine. Like she's a great actress. I think she is very funny. She's like similar to John Hamm, female version, just incredible comic timing. But I've met people that have like truly don't like her, like don't like her acting. They can't stand her when she's on screen. I'm like, and like multiple people. Yeah, she seems to have this like love-hate thing when she's on screen. I don't know what it is. And maybe it's just like my own personal experiences that I've just happened to meet like 2 or 3 people that feel the same way, which it's just bizarre to me because whenever I watch her in anything, I'm like, she's lovely. I love her. I think she's a great actress. And I think, you know, between whether it's a drama or a comedy, she seems to be pretty versatile and to be able to do anything she's asked to do when it comes to playing a character on screen. So I don't know. She's great in this movie. This must have been the first thing I'd seen her in as well. So, but going back and like rewatching it after so many years, I've seen her in so many things since. I'm like, I don't know. It kind of like all matches together. Yeah, she's awesome.
She kind of fits a nice box of like, you can tell that she's not a comedian necessarily, whereas there's some people like Maya Rudolph or Melissa McCarthy or Kristen Wiig, and it's just like it's like in their nature. They're these people that have, whether it be improv background or sketch comedy, whatever it might be, they know how to riff, they know how to hit the beats, hit the joke at the right moments, and it's like second nature to them. And Rose Byrne, who's a more like classically trained actor for drama and whatnot, I'm just like really impressed by the way that she keeps up with these like legends of female comedy. Like they're McCarthy, Rudolph, and Wiig are probably like 20 of the most important female comedians of the last century, and
yeah,
she really holds her own with them. And
I think that's what makes it work too, right? Because she is that in the movie. She's like the kind of outcast that like forces her way in to these people's lives that she would otherwise never be a part of. Like, you know, she's this like hoity-toity, spoiled woman who is just seeking attention because she doesn't get it from her family. It seems like everyone around her in her personal life hates her, even her own husband. So she's desperately seeking that affection from friends that she just doesn't have. She doesn't have friends, like not real friends anyway. People want to use her for her money and what she knows, and she's really good at doing these events, like, you know, throwing these parties and all fancy,
being like self-important and
endless bank account kind of parties, you know what I mean? So
right.
Yeah, I think that's what's really sweet.
The giant cookie at the bridal shower.
Yeah.
Like that, giving away puppies.
Chocolate fountain, trip to Paris. Yeah, I think her evolution, though, is great. In the end, when she just sort of breaks down, is like, I can't find, you know, Maya Rudolph's character. Like, I can't find her. So she needs Kristen Wiig to come help her. And that's when she just sort of breaks down and tells her, like, what's up. Like, and that's a really sweet scene in the car.
Yeah, they were both kind of desperate for the affection of the other one, and then got competitive in the process by trying to, like, you know, win Maya Rudolph's attention, but really, like, both of them were just driving off their own insecurities. I just think, like, Rose Byrne does a great job of portraying that insecurity while that character, like, never breaks. Like, she always, no matter how much she might be losing it internally, she's always acting like this facade of just being completely put together and just like with it all the time. And it's part of what drives Kristen Wiig so crazy. But yeah, she does a great job of that. And I couldn't picture anybody else for that movie.
Yeah, and I can relate too, because I mean, not when I was in my 30s, a bit immature of Annie and Kristen Wiig's character in the movie, but in my early 20s, like early to mid 20s, you know, I had my best friend still from high school, and we remained best friends, but like they went off to different colleges. One goes to Auburn, one goes to USC. I'm still in Atlanta. Eventually go to Georgia State, but they go off and they make all these new friends, right? It's like you get jealous of that. You're like, shit. Well, and then when they come home, it's like, oh, like we're still best friends. Like we're the best friends. But then you go visit them there in their new world, and it's like, whoa, they have this whole new friend base, and it goes both ways, right? It's like same thing happened with me, the same thing happened with them, and yeah, it's like, okay, this is his best friend here, and this is his best friend there. It's like, but I'm your best friend though, of like all the people, and yeah, I mean, there's definitely that sense of jealousy. Like, and I would get like I had gotten in fights and little separations with my best friends in my early 20s because of that same kind of stuff, right? It's like, well, now they have this like new best friend that they hang out with all the time in college, like fucking bullshit. So we would get these like just immature, like ridiculous tiffs, and then we eventually grew out of it. And of course, we're still all best friends to this day. But yeah, that like Kat and I were watching it, like we were wondering, like, how old is Kristen Wiig in this movie or Maya Rudolph? We had to like go and check, and I'm like, it's funny that they're in their 30s, because usually, I don't know, this type of movie, a lot of times the characters would be a little younger, 20s. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So rewatching, I was like, oh yeah, like their characters, like Kristen Wiig was my age when she filmed that movie. She was 37. And she's probably playing like a 33-year-old, I guess, or something like that. But
yeah, I mean, for the character, it kind of makes sense because they bake in there that her life has already kind of fallen apart. Like,
yeah,
she had this long relationship. She had her own career. She started her own business. And then because of the recession, it failed. And now she's starting over. So they kind of like do a good job of talking about how their life has already kind of gone through this cycle of they had it together, and then Kristen Wiig's kind of fell apart while Kristen Wiig's life got worse at the same time Maya Rudolph's was getting better. And, that kind of like dampened their friendship, I guess. And I think also like what weddings, it's a trope, and we're men, so we will never fully understand, but weddings are a much different experience for women than they are for us. So I think that's obviously part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just, this type of relationships are kind of rare too. It's easier today to have friends still from high school because we've been able to keep in touch through social media and all kinds of different like technology. We have cell phones, but I know my parents would always tell me growing up, they'd be like, you guys are lucky, we don't have friends like you guys do because we couldn't, we'd have to write letters to them, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, man. But there's a lot to relate to in Bridesmaids with those relationships with Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph's character. And it's another one of the many reasons I love the movie, because I would possibly act out the same way.
Yeah, it's just a really relatable, lasting tale.
Yeah, I don't know. We could probably talk about this movie for like 3 hours because there's so many great scenes in it.
Yeah, there's.
I do want to mention my favorite scene, which Kat, she might quote more than I do, but I quote as well sometimes. But the scene on the airplane, man, it's just like one of the greatest comedic scenes of all time. Annie, Kristen Wiig's character, is like has a fear of flying, and she was trying to plan this whole bachelor party, like on the ground, like where they are at living, and what was this movie? It's in like Milwaukee or something, isn't it? Wisconsin?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's in a really odd place, but the rest of the crew decides like, oh, we should go to Vegas. Obviously stemmed from
Hangover.
Well, no. I'm sorry. The character. Man, I hate when they don't put the.
Helen. Helen.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, says let's go to Vegas. Yeah, and all the girls want to go, except
I hate when
for.
they don't put the cast in like importance. that instead of doing it. Like, why is Terry Crews the second billed actor as I'm looking at it? But yes, Helen basically like gets them to want to go to Vegas, and they have to fly there, obviously. And Kristen Wiig's character, man, she just like is so nervous, and she's sitting next to a woman that's maybe more nervous than she is, which doesn't help. Which is also the woman that plays was it Barb and Star, which just came out recently. She co-wrote the movie with Kristen Wiig.
Right. I think Annie Mumolo is her name.
Yeah. And then Helen like gives her some, I guess what is like Xanax, and then she gives her scotch, and she just gets so drunk and high on pills, man. And the part where she keeps going into first class, like tries to disguise herself, calls the flight attendant Stove instead of Steve. And
are you in a
and my favorite line in the movie where Helen tries to give up her seat to where she can just have it, and the flight attendants don't allow that, and Annie's just like, help me, I'm poor. That shit just like gets me every time, man. It's so funny. And then of course she like has this illusion of a colonial woman on the wing, and she starts screaming it out. And there's so many great things in the scene. Like, it's hard to even like talk about because it's so fast and wonderful and great. But
meanwhile,
Fire Marshal
on the plane, right? Melissa McCarthy's husband is playing Fire Marshal John, who
or Air Marshal John. Sorry, I said Fire Marshal.
It's Air Marshal John, who's not disclosed that he's an air marshal, but Melissa McCarthy knows because, as she says later in the movie, she works for the government and she knows where all the nukes are and she's got all the codes. But yeah, so she's like trying to basically flirt with this air marshal who's played by her real life husband. That's going on. And meanwhile, the other two women, the Ellie Kemper and the girl from that show, The Goldbergs, they're in their seats and they're like talking about
Kimmy Schmidt.
Yeah, it's Kimmy Schmidt, and they're talking about the one just got married, but the sex isn't so good, and the other one has got like all these kids that are monsters. And she does the thing where she's like, "There's semen everywhere. I cracked a blanket in half."
Yeah.
And she's like, "I made this delicious dinner," and I said, "How about you guys eat?" And my son said, "Mom, why don't you fuck yourself?"
Yeah, man.
It's because he's 9. It was just so funny, that entire sequence. But yeah, you're right. It's so fast because there's like all that stuff going on with all the characters at different times. But it just like it is just like nonstop laughs the entire way through.
Yeah, I feel like the movie is just building to that moment, right? And then it happens, and then everything after that kind of just continues to fall apart for Annie. And
it's like that and all the diarrhea in the bridal shop place.
Oh God, that scene, honestly, because I knew it was coming, and like I didn't want, like, it gives me anxiety. I wanted to come and go, man, because it's just so awkward, and I can't imagine. God, like that is just because I mean we've all been there, right? We've all like eaten something that doesn't agree with us. Shit, you have more recently than anyone. And like if you're in the middle of like just public, where
doing something,
you need to find a bathroom, man. Like that's the worst feeling. And they just, oh my God, dude, when they're all like rushing to the bathroom and like the Kimmy Schmidt like throws up on top of the Goldberg's girl, like, oh, sick. And then Melissa McCarthy's like shitting in the sink. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, Maya Rudolph shits in the middle of the street.
Yeah, the famously shits in that whatever that dress was called, fancy France dress.
Yeah, you're right. We could talk about Bridesmaids forever. I remember seeing it in theaters and it was one of like the first. It was pretty early in Caitlin and I's relationship, and we went and saw it together and just fell on the floor. We were laughing so hard. And I think we went we saw it together and then went back home and told our parents, we're like, we got to go see that again. So we brought them back later in the week and saw it twice. But yeah, I love that movie. I don't think I had it on my top 5 a couple months ago, but I think I'm going to be really surprised if it doesn't make its way back in there for me this time. It's just a perfect comedy.
Nice. Yeah.
But yeah, let's move on. Let's wrap up the reviews. Let's do our best to talk about The Tree of Life.
Roger Ebert says Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life has the bold vision of Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey.
You'll be grown before that tree is tall.
It evokes the wonderment of life's experience.
You expect things that a moaning adult can accomplish.
Hit me. Come on, son.
Brad Pitt gives a performance of indelible, explosive power.
I've just always wanted you to be strong, be your own man.
The Tree of Life, rated PG-13.
I need to get another beer for this one. I was going to mention to the audience that we are in the heat of the NBA playoffs, and Thomas and I are both huge NBA fans. So we don't record during the Hawks game, but we are currently recording during the Lakers-Suns game, and it's a really good game, and it's been a bit distracting, but
yeah, I'm just kind of peering up my eyes while I talk.
Yeah, I keep
there's 2 games going on right now, right?
Yeah, Portland and the Nugs as well.
The Nugs.
I actually have NBA TV because I have YouTube TV and they supply that. It's like one of their perks. So like the other night, man, it's like one of the greatest nights of basketball viewing I've had. It was Lakers, Suns, and Mavs, Clippers, and both games were fucking awesome. Like Doncic was just dissecting the Clippers, and it was a really high scoring game. And then LeBron and AD like were revitalized. They like came back and were playing great. And I was like switching back and forth, just watching both games. It's so cool. Oh, I like this. I like when they have 2 games going on at once. Kind of gives you that like tournament feel.
Right. That is nice. It wasn't as good yesterday because the Hawks and Knicks was close for a little bit, but the Sixers pretty much were blowing out Washington the whole game. So that wasn't as fun to kind of flip back and forth with.
I mean, that series didn't even get played.
Yeah, I mean, the Wizards had a fun little play-in tournament run, but it's the same thing with Boston. Like Boston just hasn't even shown up against.
Atrocious. They did not deserve to be in the playoffs.
It'll be a lot better, like round 2 when we get ideally Sixers, Hawks, and then Nets and Bucks. That'll be a nice little Final Four, hopefully, for the Eastern Conference. Yeah. But Tree of Life, I'm gonna let you start. I'm gonna hear you can try to muster what you think about this movie. It's a very hard movie to develop opinion of, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I would say it is and it isn't. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain that. But funny enough, that I have had this movie on Blu-ray for many years. Gosh, let me think. This came out in 2011. I remember wanting to see it, but because, you know, the cast, obviously incredible. It just looked good, cinematography wise. And it was the same year. When was the first Shaky Knees here in Atlanta? I guess that was like 2013. I think it was like a couple years after it had already been out. And I was at a friend's apartment in Atlanta, and he had Tree of Life on Blu-ray. But it was his roommate's. His roommate wasn't at the house at the time. So I was like, can I borrow that Blu-ray? And my buddy said, yeah, it's my roommate's, but just make sure you bring it back. Yeah, whatever. And I've had people do this shit to me, and it really pisses me off. So this is just karma that I never got some of my own DVDs back. Like Drive is one of them, dude. Like, oh shit, we'll talk about that this year. I had Drive on Blu-ray. I have no idea where it is. Someone borrowed it. They kept it. It's motherfuckers, but whatever. I've done the same thing, which is what I did with Tree of Life. And then I took it from his roommate who I've never met. And I never watched it, for one. And I also never returned it. So I finally went back to my DVDs, grabbed it after it's been, I guess, 7 years. Finally, after taking it from my old friend's roommate all those years before, decided to watch it. And it was very slow to start. I mean,
it's a bit of a slog.
Yeah, which I expected and I was okay with. I just kept powering through. I will say I chose to watch this movie during the day as Lizzie was napping, my daughter Lizzie. So
yeah,
because I really didn't want to like try and watch it in one sitting at night. I just knew I wouldn't be able to do it. And so, yeah, I mean, as it starts, you know, you see some of the characters with, you know, Brad Pitt and Jessica Chastain and their kids kind of in their glory days when the kids were younger, right? And Jessica Chastain's characters like dancing and playing with them, and it seems real nice. I'm so bad at like saying the characters' names, but I don't even know how you're supposed to know them because they're whispering the whole damn time. But
I don't think
it's Mr. O'Brien and Mrs. O'Brien.
Yeah, they don't have names.
I guess not. Yeah, well, there's Jack and there's young Jack. So anyway,
yeah, but just Chastain doesn't really. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, you find out pretty early on that like Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien, which is played by Brad Pitt, Jessica Chastain. Oh, who I've also met, Jessica Chastain. I served her once at a restaurant. She was lovely. They have 3 children, and they're all whispering for some reason. The first part of the movie, it's just all the characters are whispering. Where were you? Like, what? Also, the movie tells you in the beginning to play it really loud, which I don't know. I have an issue with intentional like audio. I mean, because I know it. Whatever Terrence Malick is doing here with his with audio, whatever decision they made, like I get that it's intentional, but I don't know. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't. You know, I'm hearing these characters whisper and say things. I know it's supposed to be like a blip in time, because we're talking about like from the beginning of Earth being created to like I don't even know. But anyway, that annoyed me.
Have as much an issue. I listened to this movie entirely with headphones. So
yeah, I mean that was a good move.
It didn't bother me as much because I was watching this again. I watched it on my laptop, which is probably like the last place you should watch The Tree of Life.
Oh no, man, you gotta watch that shit on OLED.
But I was just kind of like, I was just kind of like in a portable position, had it downloaded, so I was just kind of watching it on my computer, and the whispering just felt like a lot of noise in my ears. It's a lot of like,
yeah,
it's like kind of like innocuous phrases. Like there's one point where the young boys, he came home and he hit us or whatever. It's, you know, it's a lot of like exposition trying to like explain what the characters are thinking through this like whispered monologue, and that stuff doesn't work for me very well. This movie's very like you can tell that it's trying to be an homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh yeah, well I was going to get to that, yeah, for sure.
It's very like National Geographic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, basically the big part in the first 20 to 25 minutes is you find out that one of their children died
in the war, right? Like that's what's presumed. Seems
they never tell you what, like how or why he died.
There's like an army dude that shows up with the news. I think, I don't know. Okay,
yeah, I mean that's kind of what I also like, yeah, presumed, but Maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. I don't know. But yeah, at the age of 19, he dies. I don't know which one would it have been? Would it have been the young blonde one or the? Because there was the artsy one that played guitar. One. The youngest one.
So it's the oldest one, the one that's like getting into all
Jack.
the hijinks. That's Sean Penn.
Yeah.
And then the kid, it's hard to kind of tell because they don't really explicitly tell you the names. But the one it's Ty Sheridan. He's like he's a big actor now. Steve. Yeah, Ty Sheridan's a big actor now, but Ty Sheridan's not the one that dies.
It's the blonde one that was he was the guitar. He was like good music. He was the musician.
Yeah, that's the one that dies. I don't know what happens to Steve. I don't think because I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but at the end of the movie, there's this big sort of afterlife symbolism moment where Sean Penn's on this beach and he's like seeing the deceased kind of wander the beach. And he finds his parents like in their younger forms and he delivers both of his brothers to them. So it's kind of presumed that Steve, with the Ty Sheridan character, dies at some point between the past and present day, but I don't know if they ever actually talk about that. I think the younger brother, who I believe is named RL, he is the one that dies in the war, and he dies kind of younger. Like Jessica Chastain is still kind of young when that happens.
Yeah, so I mean, you find out this information, and then it does, like you mentioned, just then it cuts into this sort of 2001 Space Odyssey, beginning of a planet, the supernova, the nebula, all that stuff, all that beautiful space dust and the whatever you call it. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. The big boom, right? What is it? The big bang. The big bang. Yeah, you kind of see like images of this happening for I don't know what, like 10 to 20 minutes. I don't know how long it lasts. And it's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
There's some nice sort of classical music that kind of runs over it.
Well, real classical music across the whole score.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, like some of it's in the background, and when it started doing the 2001 Space Odyssey homage, it was more like very loud, right? And you eventually get back to the family, which I thought was the most interesting part, in the middle, where you get a little bit more of story with Mr. O'Brien and Mrs. O'Brien's relationship and their relationship with the kids. Obviously, Mrs. O'Brien is this like fun-loving, like really beautiful, like wonderful mother that just does her best to raise these kids right. And then Mr. O'Brien comes home, Brad Pitt's character, and he's a lot harder on the children. Yeah, I don't know. Like that part to me was definitely the most interesting part of the movie, because I thought he was a good father, but he had real moments of like, whoa, dude, like, come on, man, you crossed the line. Like, you're being too hard on him.
I thought that a lot watching it too. Like, I couldn't tell if the movie wanted us to dislike him or not.
I don't think so, man. I don't think so. He was just flawed. He was flawed, but like, he wasn't like beating his kids. Loved his family. Like,
you could tell he loved his family a lot.
Yeah. And he was troubled. He was frustrated with, you could tell, like, because that's where it kind of comes to a tipping point of like, once, towards the end of that part of the movie, the plant closes, he loses his job. Because he's like an astrophysicist or some shit. Like he's like designs. I couldn't really even tell what he did there either. He like designs rockets or something. Like, what was he doing? He was like wasn't he like helping spaceships go up into the...
That's what it seemed like. I don't know if they like said explicitly.
They didn't really, but clearly like a very smart man. He had issues. I mean, obviously, like one of the reasons he was angry is because he wishes that he had been this like great musician that he had always wanted to be, and he had pursued that more so than like whatever the career was that he was doing now, is like this traveling like astrophysicist or whatever. But he was troubled in his own right. He had his own issues, and he took it out as a kid sometimes. But again, like he didn't like beat him. The worst part was when he told his kid to not say anything unless he had something important to say, and then his kid like a minute later told him to be quiet, which I thought was awesome. And like Mr. O'Brien, man, Brad Pitt like loses his shit. He's like, "What'd you say?" But I mean, he like grabs him.
Yeah, like told him to shut up, basically. Yeah,
he grabs him by the neck and throws him upstairs, and that was it. It was again like excessive. It was a mistake. He shouldn't have done it. Yeah, he regretted it, obviously, and that's kind of what it comes to at the end of that sequence when it comes close. It's like close to when he loses the job, and he admits to his son that like, "I love you boys. You're everything to me, and I've been too hard on you at times, and I hate that. I feel bad about that." And then his oldest son like kind of coming to this realization that like, well, I'm more like you than I am like mom, But it like parts of the movie early on, like that older kid like wants his dad to die, like because they're all the kids, all the sons are like afraid of him. Because it's interesting. They're really afraid of him. There's a lot of tense moments. There's also moments of like real love and compassion, and like Brad Pitt's character, Mr. O'Brien's like being real playful and teaching him things in the garden, and he has these real moments of serenity, of really just being a good father. And those are there, like that existed, but there's also these really hard moments of frustration that he, all to his own fault, man. He takes out his frustration and his regrets on his kids, and that was his weakness there. So, but I mean, again, I don't think he was a bad dad. It was tough. It was a tough time.
I think there's a lot of obviously this is a movie that I think at times is, I don't love this movie. I think this is a good movie. I think it's very well made. It's a technical marvel, yada yada yada. I don't connect with it emotionally really, and I think most people that love this movie might say, well, you just don't get it. I mean, I think I get it. Like there's a lot of stuff that he's trying to do here. Like he's trying to draw a lot of comparisons between nature and existence with the tiny domestic struggles of man, and basically like highlight how in the grand scheme of the universe we are so small and we're just tiny beings with our own problems in the midst of like so much else going on around us. I mean, there's a fucking scene where there's like a random scene where a dinosaur like sees another dinosaur and doesn't kill it, and
I forgot about that shit.
Like what? Like what are we doing? But it's
that a velociraptor too? When I saw it, I was like, oh shit, that's a raptor.
Yeah, and it's like all means to like hammer home this metaphor. But I think there's one quote that I found from the movie that I think sums it up nicely and sums up what they're trying to do with Brad Pitt and Jessica Chastain, these two parents that are like dichotomies and serve to represent these two different ways of approaching not just parenting but like existing. It's Jessica Chastain says to her son, I believe, "The nuns taught us there are two ways through life, the way of nature and the way of grace. You have to choose which one you'll follow. Grace doesn't please itself, accepts being slighted, forgotten, disliked, accepts insults and injuries. Nature wants to please itself, gets others to please it too, likes to lord it over them, likes to have its own way. It finds reasons to be unhappy when the world is shining around it. when love is smiling through all things. They taught us no one who ever loves the way of grace comes to a bad end. So I think like what I read into that is,
you should have whispered that, dude. Come on, can you do that again, but whisper it?
I think like
no one lives more with grace than with
no one who ever lives with grace. It will be true. Anyway, I think that Jessica Chastain is supposed to be this like symbol of grace. She's very the entire existence of her character is that she's for her kids, for her family. She thinks of nothing else. She never thinks of herself. She's constantly slighted by her husband. She ignores it. She is the epitome of grace, and Brad Pitt is the epitome of nature. He's loving, he cares, but he has self-interest. Like he's trying to provide and he's trying to like build this career for himself, but he's also impulsive and he, you know, gets brash and angry when he's insulted, and if anything happens to him that he doesn't like, he's going to react instinctually, and that's human nature. So it's these two ways of being.
Yeah, he's very sensitive.
Right.
You can't take, because like, yeah, I mean, most of the time I felt like it was like half the time he was explaining to his kid, you know, you need to do, you want to do, don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't do something, like, because he's just basing all that off his own regret. Like he wishes he was this like great musician, and you know he's upset with his own decisions in life that have led him to where he is now in his career, and he's just constantly telling his kids, and that's why he's so hard on them, like, don't be like me, you know, like be tougher, like don't take shit, don't let anyone tell you can't do something, you know. I mean, so I don't know, man. The part with Sean Penn, when it was kind of going back in, you know, into the future, it was a bit jarring. I don't know. I don't know if I needed that. That's the part where I don't really know what to think there, because yeah, like he leads his two brothers back to his parent, and then there was like old versions of them and there was like young versions of them, and they were all, but then you're also surrounded by all these other lives and stories. I don't know. What'd you think of Sean Penn's his part of the dimension or universe or whatever you want to call it, or the juxtaposition there? I don't know.
So I think the Sean Penn section is honestly what disconnects me from the movie.
Yeah.
But that being said, I think it's entirely necessary. I think it's like very important for what Malick is trying to do. I just think I'm more interested in what's going on at that house with that family. That's the part that like has my attention, and I'm kind of watching a little more intently, while the Penn stuff is maybe more over my head, but also it plays out kind of slower and is, for lack of better phrasing, more of like Malick being up his own ass in terms of how he wants to tell the story.
Because I guess Jack is like, he's sort of in the same position where he's just working this sort of mediocre job in the city.
We just don't get much explanation. Like, we don't get a ton of description into what Sean Penn as older Jack, what his life is like. You know?
And I love Sean Penn, but like the whole like wiping his head, his forehead, like, what am I doing? What's going on? He's in an elevator. Oh, people are talking. Oh, now we're on a beach.
Yeah,
right?
He
traveling through the desert.
Pretty little in the movie, but
yeah, he has like no lines. I mean, there's like, again, there's whispering of his voice some here and there, but
you need him because he's supposed to be going through some sort of spiritual awakening, I think, where he's learning to let go of whatever has, he's held into from his childhood by perhaps some form of acceptance that the universe is a lot bigger than my problems. Because he certainly seems unhappy with his job. That's the indication. He's not a happy guy at all, but he starts to kind of have these visions and go through this experience where he's seeing the vastness of the world and recognizing beauty in the world and architecture. And then he has this moment at the beach at the end where he sees parents and his brothers and all of these other people that have presumably passed. And he's like guiding them onto the afterlife, so to speak.
I'm guessing the mother died.
I think they all did. I think he's the last one left.
Well, no, because remember, he gets on the phone with his dad, and he's leaving a message saying like, "Dad, sorry, like I didn't mean what I said." There's that part with Sean Penn.
But that wouldn't make a ton of sense to me because Brad Pitt's on the beach.
Well, yeah, but so is young Jack. I don't know, man. I think it's over both our heads.
Yeah, it might be. I thought
what happened to the younger son? The younger, like well, not the youngest.
I thought everything on the beach was supposed to be some sort of afterlife, but maybe I'm wrong. It's a disconnecting section of the movie for me, but you definitely need it because Sean Penn's character is the antithesis of the whole like connection between the surreal and the more realistic elements of the house.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just read an essay on the movie and it'll make me understand it. 1 and 2, maybe like it more. But I read a little bit before we recorded, thinking that it would. And like I read the stuff about that quote that I just provided, and that kind of connected to me in a way that was a little more profound. But yeah,
again, I think I get what he's going for. I just don't know if the execution is something that I can be like, yeah, what a masterpiece. Like what a beautiful, elegant way to tell such a poignant story. Like it's not that for me. It's amazing filmmaking. It's beautifully shot and edited and all that's all that stuff, and deserves all of those Oscar nominations that it got, but not really for me. I think we're meant to presume at the end that the Sean Penn character has some sort of like epiphany of joy, because I think the last thing you see is him smiling, maybe.
Yeah, he's got kind of like a broken smile.
But yeah, it kind of a difficult movie to unpack.
Yeah, I mean, give it another 10 years or so, maybe 20, and the kids will be talking about it in school. It'll be one of those movies.
I wanted to love it a lot. I wanted to be like, oh, maybe this will like sneak into my top 5, but I don't think it's going to do that.
I don't know, and this might be somewhat blasphemous in the film world, but if I'd seen 2001: Space Odyssey when it came out in the 70s, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? What am I watching?
I was like that when I was forced to watch it in 11th grade film school. Like,
yeah,
I was told to watch it. Like, what the hell? Like, this isn't a movie. But then,
I mean, there are parts of that. There's parts of that movie that are still like difficult to watch. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah, they are.
You only sit there for so long. I mean,
I still don't. I get that it's a masterpiece and blah blah blah, but I don't know. Like, it doesn't. It's hard for me when I don't connect with something on an emotional level to be like, oh, like what a triumph. I definitely like. I had to write a lot of essays about that movie for class, which helps you build appreciation for things when you're forced to like research and dive in and analyze it. But maybe it's just not my thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to appreciate with the Tree of Life, but I agree with you. maybe I'm just not in the headspace either. You know, I don't have the kind of patience it takes to truly understand a movie like Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life, which is okay. And I'm not trying to sit here and bash it in any way, but you know, I think it was a fine movie, and maybe I'll watch it again in 10 or 20 years from now, and I'll think completely different. And that's what makes movies great. And also, what makes movies great are people being able to watch them and give their perspective on what they think and how they feel. And I think I reacted to this movie the way I thought I would. I just wasn't that into it, but I tried really hard. And at the end of it, I felt I was okay. It was okay. But maybe one day I get like
trying.
I said,
Trying is all we can do.
It was beautiful. I mean, my God, like cinematography. Wow. Gorgeous.
Yeah, can't argue with that. But I think on that note, it's a good point for us to wrap up today. We'll be back in June with some other great summer movies. But for the time being, I think that'll do it for Back to the Decade. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
Pick a disc.
Imagine if George R.R. Martin had a mental breakdown, decided that his main mode of transport was talking to him and telling him to kill people, and he somehow managed to find a way into Game of Thrones, and he was told to kill Sansa Stark because she reminded him of an ex-girlfriend. That's technically what the plot of this album is an analogue to.
Yeah, you kind of nailed it.
Yeah. So,
right in the childhood.
Normally, we take it in turns. I pick a show that you've never heard of. You pick a show that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
And we flip it and we flip it and we flip it. But we're doing Mad Mutant Month. This was your idea.
Yeah,
Tell everyone about Mad Mutant Month.
Well, because the vaccines turned us all into mad mutants.
Really?
No, we were looking for shows that has sort of like spanned through generations of childhood, whether that's through reboots or whether from like, we were looking for, shows that sort of like managed to span through Gen X, Millennial to Gen Z. And one of the ones that has done that through both reboots and reruns is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Cerebral Jukebox.
The whole premise of the song is young, lads going off to get blown to bits for no real reason other than they were sent there by a magistrate or needed the money. It's a real stark contrast, the whole series, and this song about patriotism, duty, and the sort of horrors of it as well, that you'll probably die. Because in the Napoleonic Wars and the sort of preceding wars, these were like teenagers getting sent to countries that they'd not even read about in books because they couldn't read, to get blown to bits.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.